Man, what a strange 6 weeks, huh? 6 weeks that none of us have ever experienced before. We've gone from a go, go, go society to just stay put. We've gone from daily commutes that can be anywhere from 10 to 60-minute drives to and from work to just working from home. We've gone from hanging out with friends and extended family on the daily to just talking to them here and there on phone or video call. We've gone from seeing shows whenever we want to daily TV binges and movie nights. Traveling from location to location, place to place freely without really thinking about it, to carefully planning before we even leave the house. Hugs and kisses were normal. Shaking hands were normal. Mingling without really thinking about it was normal. Now, no one knows what the normal is, or what it will ever be. This is Jess Kramer, and you're listening to The Plunge, Muskoka in Pandemic, a 6-part miniseries about COVID-19 in Muskoka, how we are adjusting, and what we can expect as summer fast approaches. This is the last episode of this series, and I want to take it to kind of reflect on what I've learned over the course of this, and focus on a few things that I didn't have time to include in earlier episodes. So first of all, let's see what has changed since I started this podcast 6 weeks ago. When the first one aired on May 3rd, things were pretty locked down. Only essential workers were allowed to leave their houses. People were worried about cottagers coming up and taking resources too early. Schools were closed. Parks were closed. Businesses were closed. As of June 4th, when I'm recording this podcast, provincial parks just reopened their backcountry and camping. But park managers are still really asking people to stay home if they're sick and obtain to social distancing rules if they do go camping. Schools are still closed in Ontario and will remain that way until September. However, BC schools just reopened this week on a voluntary basis. Summer camps are canceled for the summer, but day camps are still a maybe for July and August. Cottagers, for the most part, have come up to Muskoka and are still asked to meet with the social distancing standards and not travel back and forth. Whether or not people are actually doing that, we can't really regulate for sure. The fire ban was lifted just in time for the May 2-4 weekend, so residents in Muskoka are still allowed to have small fires. There was one new case of COVID in Muskoka since I first started airing this show. The numbers throughout Ontario are slowly going down, and people are leaving their houses to travel a bit more freely. That being said, there has already been some backlash as the province tries to slowly reopen the economy as people fear for another wave. We've had a few days where numbers have gone up. Just last week in Toronto, there was a story about a couple hospitals that had failed to give proper numbers to the government on how many cases there were. They missed over 700. A few farmers markets are open for business, and many other stores have reopened their doors. But nobody's hanging around. You can't sit down in restaurants, everything is to go, and most events have been postponed until next year. Weddings are being postponed, or couples are just deciding to elope. I think it's safe to say that most people's summer plans have been changed.
Okay, so you need my name. It's Emily Langevin, and I live in BC. I live in Steveston, BC.
Emily Langevin lives in BC, and her plans were drastically changed when COVID-19 hit. She grew up in Muskoka and had come back for March to visit and take care of her 96-year-old mother, who still lives on her own. But when things started shutting down, Emily's plans changed. Here she is to explain a bit of her story.
I'm right now in Muskoka at my mom's. I arrived in Ontario on the 4th, came to my mom on the 6th, was supposed to go home on the 24th, and now this is, June 2nd, and I'm still here.
Was it the 4th of April or the 4th of May?
4th of March.
Oh, so you were...
I arrived on the 4th of March in Ontario and the 6th of March at my mom's. I went to my sister's for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I'm probably, there's 8 kids in our family, and I think I'm probably the best one to be here with Mom because everyone else has other commitments. I'm retired, and I have a part-time job that I do wine tastings. And, of course, wine tastings are not happening right now, so I didn't have work to go home to, so I just thought I didn't feel safe going home at the end of March with all the people being repatriated. It just didn't make me feel comfortable. So I just thought, well, I'll cancel my flight, and the airlines were kind enough to not charge you a cancellation, because all kinds of people were canceling things. And I just thought, well, I'll stay and help my mom. She's 96 years old and lives on her own in a house. So I thought it was pretty important for someone to be here with her. And I think most of my family is pretty happy that I am here.
In Canada, 19% of the people affected by COVID are over the age of 80. Now, that's mainly because group homes have been hit the hardest by outbreaks, and residents in them don't generally have as strong of immune systems to fight off the disease as the rest of the population. But people over the age of 70 in general have a much higher risk of complications and fatalities from COVID, especially because at that age, people often already suffer from lung or heart problems, and COVID just puts more stress on that. Emily's mother has osteoporosis, amongst a few other issues. It's made her shrink from 5'2" to 4'9". So this isn't a time where she wants her mom being left alone or leaving the house too much.
Rather than everybody worrying about her, I just thought, why don't I stay? I'm in a position to do it. I don't have any work at home, and as I said, I'm retired. But I have a family there and a home, and I miss my granddaughter like crazy. But it's a sacrifice that I'm willing to do for my mom. I have booked myself for July the 7th.
Canadian Airlines have begun booking flights within Canada, but international travel is still suspended. There's been talks about opening it back up in July, but from what I've heard, it's still kind of a long shot. Emily's planning to go back to BC in July so she can see the rest of her family, but that means having to take a plane and then self-isolate for 2 weeks afterwards.
I'm terrified of the airport, I must say. I mean, I've been quarantined here with my mom while self-isolating. And we've done everything right. She hasn't been able to go to church, which is bad for her. And then I go to the airport, and I got no choice over how it's going to go, right? I have to be in the airport with other people. I have to get on an airplane and sit where they want me to sit. And so that, I know, Mom, thanks. It's a little unnerving. I'm going with WestJet, and they did book me. So it may change between now and then if there's a second wave. But I'm anticipating being able to get on that flight. And so when I go home, I'm going to be wearing a mask, a face shield, gloves. I'm going to take Clorox wipes and wipe down my seat. Even though they say they clean it, I want to just be sure, very sure. After all this time of, isolating, I want to be able to be sure I get home without bringing anything home to my family.
Yeah, does kind of the idea of getting on a plane kind of freak you out a little? Because I know I kind of feel like that.
Absolutely. I am very freaked out about getting on an airplane. That's why I didn't go in March, because at that point, at the end of March, they were repatriating all kinds of people from all over the world, and I just didn't think it was worth it. And then to go home and be alone, I wouldn't have been able to see my granddaughter and my daughter anyway.
Emily's situation is quite intense compared to most of ours. But like most of our stories, there are positive things that this pandemic has brought, and downsides.
My mom looked after me when I was little, and all of us, so it's the time for me to pay her back a bit,
Of course.
Valuable time that I get the stories and, the memories, and sometimes I get them more than once, but that's okay,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So other than that, it's been a good experience, but I am going to be sad to leave. Another good thing, too, is I've really gotten to know my brother and sister-in-law, because usually when I come back, I come in August, I stay for 3 weeks into September, and I might see her twice for something, and that's it. But we're really getting to be close again, which is kind of cool. This is the longest I've been away from my granddaughter, too, in a while.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I really, really, really miss her. She's 8, and, they grow really fast when they're that age, and I'm missing a whole bunch of things, and she's at home with her mom, and I could give her mom a break if we both were through the isolating problem.
Yeah.
I could give her mom a break and say, hey, bring her on over and she can stay with me for a while.
I bet there were a ton of people who were planning to visit friends and family this summer who now can't. We know the ways that COVID-19 affects our own lives, but I think we often forget about how it's affecting other people who are not in the same situation as us. I've heard the line, "we're all in this together," muttered a lot over the past few months, and I think that really softens the blow of losing work or not being able to hug loved ones for an extended period of time. But another thing I learned while interviewing people for the show is that everyone is affected a little differently, and everyone is handling it in different ways. How? Well, I'll get more into that after the break. So don't go away. The Plunge will be right back after this short intermission.
Okay, well, I'll just do another stupid little riddle, okay? And if you guys know it, pretend that you don't, so it sounds good, okay? 2 coins make up 30 cents, and one of them is not a nickel. Hey, did you put it on your stream? Yeah. You did? Jess, I said not to, because it sounded stupid. Okay, let's try this. Okay, so there's a farmer, and he's trying to get a fox, a rabbit, and a cabbage across a river. Would you do this one too?
No, you told me that one.
Shh. Anyways, and you don't have to answer though. Someone else could. Anyways, and he's trying to get them all across the river. But the problem is, if he leaves the cabbage with the rabbit will eat the cabbage, and leaves the fox with the rabbit. The fox will eat the rabbit. So how does he get all of those animals across the river, but only taking one at a time? You guys have any response? No?
If you take the cabbage across, leave it there, come back. Oh no, yeah. Okay, if you take the Can you eat the cabbage? Just cut out the middleman.
You only take one at a time.
Can you? Yeah, but could you just eat the cabbage on that side and then forget about it?
You have to bring that. You're going to the farmer's market here, okay?
Oh, okay.
Just bring
So if you
the
take
rabbit across, and then how do you get the other stuff across? So you can't take the rabbit.
Okay. I think I got it. So if you take the. Oh no, you can't. Okay, if you take the fox. No, if you take. Okay, I don't know.
Well, what do you mean you don't know if you can take the cabbage back across? I mean, sorry, if you can take the boat. Okay, then yeah, just go with the fox first and then come back.
The rabbit will eat the cabbage.
I mean, sorry, go with the cabbage first.
No, the fox will eat the rabbit.
Sorry, go with the rabbit first.
Yes.
And then come back. And then go with the fox, I guess. And then go with the come back and then go with the cabbage.
No, you can't leave the fox with the rabbit. You would eat the fox, or they would eat the fox would eat the rabbit.
Oh, sorry, this is a more complicated question than I initially thought it was.
What did you start with, the rabbit? Yeah, rabbit. So if you take the rabbit across, leave it there, come back, take the take the no, I don't know.
No. So what you do is you take the rabbit across, and then you take the rabbit across. You go back, you grab the cabbage, and then you go back across the river. You pick up the rabbit, go back and grab the fox, and then you go back again. Yeah, because you can't leave them on the boat at the same time either. They would eat each other. You leave the rabbit, go drop the fox off. Fox won't eat the cabbage. Go back, grab the rabbit. Robin's your father's brother. Or in other terms, Bob's your uncle.
Welcome back to The Plunge. Let's dive in. Although there seems to be a bit of light shed on the darkness of COVID now, I don't think we're out of the cave just yet. We've got the whole summer of uncertainty ahead of us. That being said, I spoke to a ton of different business owners for this series, asking them about what their summer plans might be. and it was interesting to hear how each business has a different way of handling how to reopen or still continue to work during the pandemic. Bryn from Prim and Prop Event Co. created a whole new package for elopement weddings. Robbie Irvine, who owns the Oar and Paddle restaurant, decided to start selling things like their Caesar dressing in large amounts, so you can just go in and take home a whole bottle of it. They even decided to launch an online store. Greg Knight, who owns Clear Lake Brewery, has collaborated and created packages with a ton of other local businesses, which he told me is something they probably wouldn't have done in such large amounts otherwise. I also spoke with Jeff Sotheby, who owns 3 Guys in a Stove in Huntsville. Our interview was a little late, so it didn't make it into my episode about businesses, but they're doing something really cool that I still want to include briefly. So here's Jeff to talk about what 3 Guys decided to do in the midst of this pandemic.
So back in the middle of March, when the pandemic hit, obviously, we shut down a couple of days before the province mandated us to do so. Unfortunately, right at the beginning of March break, we tried to do some service in regards to making sure that spacing was in place and if someone was sick, not to come in, and doing our due diligence in regards to what we knew at that point back in March. And so we did physically shut down the curbside and getting food out of restaurants. There was a lot of question about, should you do it, should you not, in regards to the public. And so we made a business decision just to physically shut it down. We knew what our costs would be because we didn't want the unknown cost of food cost or labor cost to be costing us additional dollars during the shutdown period.
3 Guys in a Stove also never opened up curbside pickup until just recently, because they weren't sure how to do it absolutely properly. They've recently opened back up for pickup and adapted their menu to be more takeout friendly. They have these incredible all-you-can-eat brunches that used to be marché, where you go up to the counter, order, and they make everything in front of you. Fresh eggs, waffles, pancakes, sausages. It's amazing. Jeff says they're taking that away and changing it to breakfast skillets, with whatever you want on their breakfast menu that'll be brought to your table and continuously refilled, and brought back to you as many times as you'd like by waiters, so there isn't that direct contact with customers to kitchen. It's pretty much the exact same, only you don't have to walk up to the breakfast counter to get your breakfast. And they also added something that they hadn't planned to add before. Here's Jeff as he told me a bit about how they plan to start opening up.
We will open up not only with our new food truck, where we're offering, basically just walk up to the counter and order your food and away you go, because we can't provide seating. So that'll hopefully move us into possibly the middle of June or the 3rd week of June, where my fingers are crossed that we will receive notice that we are able to open with limitations. So we'll run this takeout throughout the summer, be it the food truck, to try to enhance the sales that we're going to be unable to do with inside our 4 walls at 3 Guys in a Stove.
The food truck's really interesting. Was that something you guys had kind of planned on adding before the pandemic even, or was that...
Absolutely not. No, we weren't. But, certainly our perception of the consumer, I think everybody is getting quite used to eating in their cars, eating outside, and as the weather gets nicer, it's even easier, obviously. So we do feel that our takeout sales moving into the summer will be, may offset some of our in-house sales that we would typically do. The big factor is liquor, beer, and wine for us. Certainly serving out of a food truck, we can't offer those products to go out the door because it's not licensed, obviously, and we're unable to license a food truck. But with our curbside dinner, we can sell a bottle of wine, and it would go out with we're calling it a 3 Guys barbecue curbside menu for the summer. Just in case there's anybody out there that doesn't want to barbecue but likes to eat barbecue, because I'm sure there's a few. And we can offer some beer and wine to go along with that curbside pickup for sure.
The food truck is now opened and offers breakfast and all-day lunch. And when the restaurant does open for sit-ins, they will have all the regular precautions. Hand sanitizer, face masks for employees, sanitizing booths after people use them, etc. It's been interesting to hear all the different ways businesses are adapting to COVID-19. But as a single childless woman, something I keep forgetting is the burden that schools closing and physical distancing has on parents. A lot of people who have kids who normally send them to school or to a babysitter's to get watched while they work can't do that anymore. So it makes working from home harder when you now have to take care of children full-time too. And you have nowhere to send them. On top of that, you now need to homeschool your kids. And the fact that summer camps aren't able to run this year means parents can't even send their kids away to get the fresh air and freedom that they're probably craving even more now than ever this year. Deb Harold, the palliative care physician I spoke to in my first episode, had an interesting quote about the times we're living in and what it's like being a parent right now. For context, I asked her what the best and most difficult part of quarantine was for her family, and she referenced back to a time they spent 6 months traveling together.
At home, it's great because we spend a lot of time with the children. It feels like last year when we traveled for 6 months and it was just the four of us all the time. And the goodness of that, the amazing family time, that kind of feels like that again. And the negative of that would be the same as it was when we were traveling, really, is trying to be the multiple roles that your children really need in life, which is things like teacher and best friend and parent and confidant and playmate and all of those things, which is difficult to do.
Tanya List, the florist from my wedding episode, also has an 8-year-old, and she told me about how her and her husband now have to delegate their time teaching her, and it's made her appreciate having school and teachers even more. For context, we talked about our work, and I told her how much less busy I am at the moment.
We have like a million things to do. So there's never, like, it's so funny. It's like, there was never enough time before, but now, like, I have a 8-year-old, so she is in grade 2, and she's, still learning to read, so she can't do her homework herself. So we have to sit there, either myself or my husband, for 3 hours every morning. So for 3 hours every morning, one person is dedicated to teaching her how to do fractions or do reading or whatever she's supposed to be doing that day.
Because I guess I don't have kids, so I kind of forget that, like, having your kid, like, now you've become a teacher as well, right?
Yeah, totally. And I don't want to be a teacher. I think teachers who already had a hard enough job, I think more people now are going to actually appreciate what they do. It's, I don't know, one of my neighbors is a teacher, and she's phenomenal. Like, I just look at her, and I'm just like, I don't even know how she does it on the daily. Like,
again, as someone without children, it hadn't really dawned on me that there are some people out there who now have to take care of 1 or 2 more little people at a time now. As someone who doesn't have any work because of COVID-19, I had also forgotten that there are people whose jobs have actually gotten busier, more dangerous. The frontline workers who still have to go into work every day and put themselves at risk, and still don't even get a raise. Randy Mitson from Algonquin Outfitters told me about some of the things he's doing to thank the frontline workers in this time.
The other silver lining that I'm seeing is I think we appreciate people around us more. I think we realize that our frontline hospital workers and stuff like that are very, very, very important.
Randy then asked me to pull up his Facebook profile to show me something on his timeline that he'd been doing to help show his support for frontline workers.
So if you want to search for...
Okay, I have your profile brought up.
Okay, feel free to friend me if you want, and I'll...
Add friend, there we go, I friended you.
Yeah, I think most of what I posted has been public, and you'll see that what I've been doing, other than posting pictures of my puppies.
I was going to say your dogs.
If you scroll down to May 15th at 2:44, I think it's the 4th post down. Yep. It's a bunch of pictures.
Yep, random acts of kindness.
So what I decided to do when I started working from home is I normally spend about $120 a week on gas commuting back and forth to work and driving to meetings and that. So I decided I would take my $120 and give it out to people that I wouldn't normally tip, $20 at a time. left-hand corner
Yeah.
is my postal worker.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever tipped a postal worker.
He also donated to the pet store clerk, a woman serving him takeout, an LCBO employee, checkout worker at the Independent, general store manager. The people whose jobs are so crucial to our daily or weekly lives, but often seem invisible.
I've been doing this for, I don't know, 2 months now.
Yeah.
So every time I go out to get supplies, I take a lot of cash with me, and I've been donating it. It makes people smile. For it. I tipped my pharmacist, and she's like, I don't think I've ever got a tip. For it. So just, my little part of trying to show appreciation to all those people that were working throughout this whole thing. And it's more than just hospital workers and police and that. It's the people that work at the grocery store and the people that are still doing takeout and the post office and the pharmacist and that. So it was just my way of showing appreciation for those people.
We've learned to appreciate so much during these last 2 to 3 months. I'm honestly losing track of how long it's been exactly. This is a time when many of us are self-reflecting. We're talking about what the new normal's going to be. We've taken time to take up new hobbies, and maybe even think about what we want to change in our lives moving forward, and our society moving forward. I write this episode in the midst of an uproar from the Black Lives Matter movement. This week has been full of protests in the streets of the US and Canada for a call to end police brutality for the oppressed Black citizens of North America, and let everyone know that their lives are just as important as everyone else's. As a white woman, I'll never know what it's like to live as a Black person and what their fears and struggles are daily. But, and this goes for every person like me, I know there's a lot in Muskoka. What we can do is support and learn about Black lives, support their artists, listen to their music, download their podcasts, read their books, and understand that we'll never know, but we can always learn new things. I just finished listening to a great podcast called 1619 about the history of African Americans in North America. There's another podcast called About Race that's great, where people just openly discuss multiculturalism and racism. And Seeing White is another really good podcast that talks about criminal injustice, the housing crisis, schooling system issues that are going on in the US. And there's tons of other resources online. They're not hard to find. So, moving forward into this new normal that we've been hearing people talk about so much during this pandemic, we should take advantage of that. Think about all the things that haven't been working in our system so far. Racial issues are important, but they're also connected to other social justice issues like economic and the environment. Throughout this podcast, I asked every person I interviewed what their silver lining is in this pandemic, and everyone almost immediately had one. Everyone had something different to say, whether it be spending more time with family, saving money, appreciating what they have, or just taking time to self-reflect. What's my silver lining? Well, it's that we've been given a bit of a refresher on life in terms of what the world will be like when we come out of this. After listening to Black activists speak about the Black Lives Matter movement, researching the effects that COVID-19 has had on our planet, and even just hearing about how many people have taken time to support local businesses more than ever right now, I've learned that the old normal wasn't working for everyone, in more ways than one, and we have to decide when we fully open back up if we want to go back to that normal, or if we want to take this refresher as a way to stand up for the injustices that have been forsaken in our society for years. Just like everything else I've spoken about in this podcast, it's uncertain. But after everything I've been listening to these past couple weeks, I'm hopeful. We just have to keep talking and listening. Keep pushing for that better normal that helps everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the Plunge mini-series, Muskoka in Pandemic. If you liked it, please rate it, follow it, and share it with your friends and family. If you'd like to reach me, you can find me on Instagram. Just search Jess Kramer, or you can email me directly at jess@sproutproductions.ca. Thanks to everyone who took the time to speak with me during such an already stressful time. Special thanks to my brother Emmett for recording all those dumb little intermissions that you've been hearing, and my friend Heather for encouraging me and supporting me throughout each episode. To everyone else, I say, stay safe this summer, and don't forget to love and watch out for one another.